Welcome to the Ladies Talk Show. This is your host, Leah Richheimer. We are in the middle of chapter 8, and we are talking about communication. We're talking about H.O.T, how to say it, the outcome desired, and T is timing. And we're working on those three things. We're in the middle of doing outcome, and we have so many questions from chapter 8. We are going to answer them, and I'm not doing reading today. We're following through on marriage secrets, and we're on chapter 8. Okay, let's go. Gila, what's our first question?
So Eva asks, what if my husband doesn't get it when I try to influence instead of control? He never gets what I'm trying to say unless I'm very direct and clear with him, which is controlling. This happens a lot regarding bedtime with our kids. Unless I specifically tell him what to do, he doesn't follow the routine protocol, and bedtime becomes a disaster.
Very good. If bedtime is a disaster, guess what it means? It means your husband shouldn't be doing bedtime. If it means that the only way it happens properly is you're barking at him the whole time, now listen, if you're working full time and he's a stay-at-home dad, which is rare these days or whatever, it's not that common, but let's say that's the case, then it's different. But he will understand the value of a routine because he's the one 24/7. So he'll have to get with the program because he knows how miserable it is to put the kids to bed at 6 o'clock and at 9:30 still be dealing with it, So if he is that stay-at-home dad, he's going to have worked out a routine, God willing, or everyone's going to suffer for it. But if that's not the case, and you're a full-time stay-at-home mom, but you work, you've got a lot of kids and you work very hard to keep them taken care of or whatever, and to run the household, whatever, and he's coming home from a full day's worth of work and he's in charge of bedtime routine, that's not appropriate. Totally not appropriate. If you are a full-time homemaker and he is a full-time worker, okay, then you are responsible for everything that goes on in the house and all the work that goes on in the house. Can he help out? He should help out. And if you've got 9 kids, he needs to help out, and he's obligated to help out. But it has to be divvied up in a way that doesn't cause conflict. So if the bedtime routine is a disaster, he's in charge of dishes, he's in charge of mopping the floor, he's in charge of trash, whatever it is. But Leah, I want him to feel close to his kids and responsible for his kids. Well, guess what? Do you think it's really good and healthy for the kids to watch mommy and daddy having this battle every night, and worse, watching their mother try and control their father every night? It's a terrible precedent to set. Your kids will learn terrible things. It's better that they, a babysitter from up the street that they don't even love and won't see ever again, in their life, comes in and gets their pajamas on and gets them in the bed and reads them a book in time. That's better than having a child spend every night watching their mother try to control their father and conflict. Very, very disastrous for children's sense of serenity and peace. Worse off, they feel guilty that they're the ones who's causing so much stress and strife between the parents. So they'll carry that burden as if it's all their fault. That's just how children are, okay, for the most part. So you can do enormous amount of damage with this, and you're better off just figuring out a different plan. What's plan B? We tried plan A for 6 months or a year. Now, if your husband insists and says, listen, I want to be bedtime, I don't see the kids at all in the morning. I'm already at work. Whatever, this is the only time I see him. And also, if you have half, he works halftime, you work halftime, there's different mixes. It's not always the homemaker and the thing, or the wife works and the husband doesn't work, or he goes to learn, and depending, a lot of the men who go to learn now are doing carpools, and there's a whole bunch of mixes of what works and what doesn't work. But this bedtime routine for sure does not work, and you need to fix it. So it means either you're having a conversation with him, or you're doing research on what other people do and then bringing them here, the 5 different options that other people do. Again, if you're quizzing other friends or whatever to see what they do to bring data to your husband, you can't make in any way lashon hara about your husband or say that it has anything to do with you. Say, I was writing an article, or I was thinking about how nighttime routines work, and I was just curious how other people do it, whatever. If you can do it without asking directly so that they think badly of your husband, that would be urgently important. But if you ask, as if you're, just gathering data, that's also okay. You have to be very careful how you do it without divulging that your husband's incompetent, or your husband doesn't know how to do it right, or that there's a lot of conflict in your marriage. If you have one confident, you want to share that information with and get their advice, an older lady, somebody who's been there, done that, somebody wise, a Rebbitzin who's been there, that's fine. And she can know a little bit of the issues, because that's not Lashon Hara. You're trying to get help. You're not trying to tell her to make her look bad on your, feel bad about your husband. Again, these are strict laws of Lashon Hara. You need to know them. You need to learn them. You need to ask them before you do this kind of thing. But very, very crucial that this is solved. You cannot carry on with this situation going on day after day, and sitting down with your husband might be the best solution to start with. Okay. Wow. Good question. Good question.
Okay. So this is about the soft language. Hadassah asks, is this soft language technique a good thing to teach my kids to their father, or is there no need for that in a father-child relationship?
It's excellent. I just do it yourself. This whole book is about your relationship with your husband. What trickles down into your family will shock you. You will be so happy. Okay. But if you start trying to teach your kids and trying to whatever, you're going to get all mishkabubbled in your brain. And also there's a trickle down effect with respect. If you respect your husband, your kids will respect him anyhow, and they'll start using the language without you saying anything. Or they may not. There's a 20% chance they don't, and they don't learn it, whatever. When they get married, all that stuff, all that respect you're giving your husband will sink into their brain, and their behavior, God willing, will replicate that. But you're probably much better to teach them how to be respectful by being respectful than by saying, you should be respectful. Not going to work. It's going to backfire. It's going to be worse off. So forget that. It's not on your to-do list. It's not on your task list. Just be the best wife you possibly can be. Excellent question. Okay, next.
Okay, so Bracha says, the outcome desired for all our conversation is almost always the same, for him to see that I'm right. It's not that I don't think he's smart. I just happen to usually be more sensible about things and have a better track record of success. Am I being unreasonable?
It's not. You're probably being perfectly reasonable, but if the goal was to be reasonable, if the goal is to have the closeness, the caring, the connection that women deeply crave from the deepest part of their essence. And if you're not feeling the desire to be close to your husband, look into your childhood of what thwarted that, what intention was missing. I know it's easy to say, if you're not feeling it, it's something wrong with you, so I'm right, because you can't prove any of these things. I'm just saying, if you look deeper, if you look deep into what would stop you from that closeness, you'll probably find stuff, So just, I guess, because we know that Chazal are telling us that, and told us for 3,000 years, that a woman deeply craves that closeness and connection to her husband, let's just take our word for it and work towards that. And if you aren't happier when you have that closeness, then that's another issue, but doubtful. So let's just go with the assumption that Chazal are absolutely spot on right about this. And what you have to know is that your desire to be right and to prove yourself and whatever, that's an outside construct. It's like people have told you, maybe you were in school and you were smarter than everybody and you just got A's and you was the one raising your hands and answering or whatever, and you got a lot of positive feedback by being that know-it-all and knowing everything and doing it right and being more sensible. So that's what your whole drive is to be. Forget about closeness. Who cares? I'm right and everyone thinks I'm great. Why doesn't my husband think I'm great? Because he's at the tail end he's at the other end of the punch. He's this, and you're, so of course he doesn't think you're right and he's fighting, and it's, or he's just rolling over and saying, whatever, dear, which is even worse. That apathy is tragic in a marriage. So the point is, you might be right. You might be more reasonable. You might have better insight. You might have better track record. All of those things might be correct if the outcome is to be right. If the outcome is closeness, all those stuff is worth nothing. It's worth nothing. And if you are able to understand and to think about the fact that what is going to bring your greatest level of satisfaction and contentment is that closeness, and you can chip away at what keeps you from being close, and could be being Mrs. Know-it-all and always right keeps you from that closeness. It'll have less of a grip on you, God willing, especially over time, and you work on it and you think before you make a communication, you start thinking, how am I going to, how am I going to handle this in a way that brings closeness? If that becomes your ratzon, your reason for being, and that because you build that into yourself as closeness is what I want to achieve. Closeness is what I want to achieve. Two things will happen. Number one, you will become better and better at achieving that closeness. And number two, we have a guarantee from God himself that he will help you in that ratzon to be closer to your husband. We have a guarantee. So if that is, where you put your thoughts and your energy and your emotional energy and your physical energy and your spiritual energy is being closeness to your husband, a lot of these things that you're so sure that your habits and the ways of being will fall away without even huge amounts of work. It will take work. It will take effort. But if you focus on that, it's obviously what God wants. God wants you closer to your husband. That's why he married you guys. Yeah, that's why he put you together, is to be closer and closer and closer. It's obviously what God wants. So if you're doing Hashem's will for your own benefit, fine, but if you're doing God's will, he's going to help you with it. So God should bless you, and you should have koyach in this and strength in this, and you should have clarity and in the moment. That's, overall, like right now you're listening to me, you're like, oh yeah, I can do this. And then in a moment, it's like, okay, I get that. But I'm just saying that if you have a drive and you work towards this, you will be, please God, rewarded better and bigger than you can ever imagine. And I wish you hatzlacha in it. Very good.
I mean,
yay.
It reminds me of a quote. You could either be right or have a relationship. Okay.
Wow. Gorgeous. Okay, good.
Okay. So Tamar asks, even when I have a plan of what I want to say all worked out, I get very emotional as I'm speaking, and the words I plan to say go out the window and the conversation deteriorates fast. Help.
Oh, I got it. You might be a writer. You might be a person who would be much better, writing your husband a letter. I don't know if he's the type who would like reading a letter, but sometimes I have students who they can't express themselves and they get flubbed and they say the wrong thing, or they fall back to old habits, or they do it like their parents did and they were never happy with how their parents communicated. So the alternative is to sit down and compose a letter. And you might, first of all, whenever you write an emotional letter, best advice I could ever give you, write it and wait 24 hours. So if you wrote it, Monday morning, Tuesday morning, you're editing it. Because when you go back, you're like, ooh, I didn't mean to say that. And, oh, this wasn't clear. And, this sounded harsh. I want to soften it. Or this sounded, I didn't get this exactly right. So 24 hours is a miracle how it works. So sometimes frustrating because you want them to get the communication, and it's Saturday night and you're annoyed and you don't want to spend all day Sunday without him having the right communication. But waiting is always the best idea. But it could be that that's what you just need to do. Another option is to sit there and talk to him and say, I just find that when I sit down and talk to you, I get flustered. I don't say the thing I need to say. I don't think it's your fault at all. Or maybe it is his fault. It's better, even if it is his fault, to say, I don't think it's your fault, and say, I'd like to talk to you about talking. Like, I don't know how to get it. Maybe you can help me. Maybe you can, again, taking my cupped hands and hand the problem to your husband and say, I don't know how to do this in a way that is successful. I feel like every time I talk to you, I get tongue tied and I don't say it right. And I say the wrong thing, or I say the hurtful thing, and it just makes me feel terrible. What do you think we can do about this? So there's a lot of options to you. The first thing you have to do is give yourself a pat on the back for being willing to do the work to communicate properly. And I wish you hatzlacha on it. Try many things. There's books on communication you can read. There's a whole chapter in Marriage Secrets on communication, and maybe that'll give you some good ideas. Read other Torah books on communication, and it's really one of the most important things we can work on, because that creates connection. Okay, good. Okay,
Okay,
what else?
gorgeous.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tova asks, I'm worried if I think of hot before I try communicating, it will make me more anxious, and I might just avoid having the conversation in the first place. I have to work up a lot of nerve before bringing things up because I'm so scared of confrontation.
It's exactly what you need to say to your husband. I have so hard times, talking about my feelings and what's going on with me because I'm so afraid of confrontation. And, this is no fault of your own. I mean, maybe it is his fault, whatever. But again, you're taking the blame and saying, I don't know. This could be from my childhood where I just always feel shut down. When I tried to express myself, I was like booed and like, oh, you couldn't feel that way. And that's a dumb feeling and whatever. But these were my feelings when they were invalidated. So I have a fear of these types of communications. Can you help me figure out how I can communicate to you in a way that doesn't make you feel defensive and that doesn't make me feel invalidated? And have a conversation, schmooze about it. If you feel like that, no matter what you do, it's not getting through, it probably is best to get a third party to learn how to communicate with each other. It's crucial to closeness, and it's crucial to your feeling validated, and that your emotions and your feelings are valuable, heard, expressed in a way that doesn't hurt other people, but that allows you to be taken care of, and let your emotions be taken care of, and let you be physically taken care of and spiritually taken care of. It's important, and you deserve it. So if you can't get the words across properly, you need to be in an environment with a third party that can help you do that. Now, I will say that some third parties are incapable of doing that. Probably any therapist or Rav or whatever, isn't going to, maybe 10 or 20 or 30, I don't know, whatever percentage of them aren't going to be able to bring you to that point. And you have to be wise enough and smart enough and determined enough that if you find such a person and you've gone for 3 sessions, 6 sessions, 8 sessions, and there isn't any growth building, to move on to somebody else who, maybe has a better personality for you, or a better fix, or they're a better therapist. There's people at the top half of the class and there's a people at the bottom half of the class. And maybe you need to find somebody who's more skilled. And that's always true of anything in life. But to have that conversation and to feel validated is very, very crucial. That's Lacha. Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Okay, so Brachi says, I hate to say it, but I kind of feel like my husband's maid, even though he appreciates all I do for him. Maid, like a housekeeper.
Oh, my husband's maid. Okay, got it.
Even though he appreciates all I do for him, how do I change this unhealthy mindset?
Oh, that's good. She said, even if he appreciates it, she's still.
Yeah, he's showing appreciation. He doesn't treat her like a maid. She just feels like all the mundane tasks are making her feel like she's his maid.
So that sounds like something that the outside world influenced her on, not necessarily something that, right? Not necessarily that she came to on her own, depending on what their division of labor is, if he's a full-time worker and she's a full-time homemaker, that's her job. Like her husband could be at work, at the bank, doing transactions, and he said, oh, I feel like I'm her slave. No, that's your job. Now, if she works full time and he works full time, and he comes home and he sits on the couch, and she comes home and she does the dinner and the this and the, which is typical. Welcome to the reality. But if he's not helping at all and he's not chipping in at all when a Rav has said he should, or when it's appropriate for him that he should, if he has a very, very stressful job and he's a type of person who needs a lot more downtime, everything is dependent on the situation. There's no blanket, here's how it should look. So if she has in her mind, again, we know that expectations are what ruin her life. If in her mind, her expectations are that he should be doing this, and this, and he isn't, she's going to feel like his maid, his housekeeper. If her expectations are that she works he works full time and she's in charge of the household, she's going to fold the socks in a different way. She's like, this is my job. This is the hard part of the job. At least I listen to the ladies talk show while I'm folding the laundry, or at least while I'm doing the dishes, I can listen to, a podcast, whatever, if she's doing these different things to make her harder work better. We all know that 80% of, even have the best job in the world, 20% of that job is going to be grunt work. It's going to be hard work. It's going to be annoying work. 80% of it, hopefully you get your 50-50, whatever your percentage is. And you might have different, I had a woman who, like, she wanted to be a homemaker. She hated cooking, hated. So, I get it. That's like, what women are occupied with a lot is figuring out what to make for dinner or how to whatever. The only thing she can do in that kind of thing is try and find the 5 least hated things she likes to make. Like, she thought making dinner meant at around 4:00 you have to start whatever. It could be dinner is that morning before you go off to work or before you go off doing anything. You pour some rice in a crock pot, you pour some chicken, you pour some carrots and some potatoes and some spices, you're done, whatever, and then you're serving it. So there are ways to make the grunt work, the harder work, easier on yourself. And that's what I suggest in this case. And to understand that her expectations about what her husband should be doing and how, if he's appreciating her, that's already huge. I can tell you how many students I have where their husband doesn't even appreciate it. So, she just needs to work on those things, works on her expectations, and discuss with her husband maybe different plans, different divisions of labor. So very good. Okay.
Really good. Beautiful. So this is the last question that we have time for. Okay. Panina says, I hope her real name is not Panina, because my husband likes to gossip. I don't want to hear Lashon Hara. How do I respond in a way that's not disrespectful? And how can I tell when he is venting and needs me when he is just gossiping?
How can she say that last part? I didn't understand the last part.
And how can I tell when he's venting and needs me when he is just gossiping?
Oh, you mean like sometimes it could be he needs her to listen to it for, in other words, you're allowed to listen to someone vent if it's the tuelis, if there's a reason. Instructive, like constructive. Yeah, it doesn't even necessarily be in constructive venting. It would need to be, you need to look into the laws of Lashon Hara, but constructive means that there's a purpose of it. It could be the person just needs to vent. But Gil, if I were saying to you and I were mad about, and this person did this and this and this, and you're like listening. And so because you listened, I didn't go and tear them apart. I didn't tell 10 other people. I didn't, there's all kinds of things that sometimes a person needs to vent. So I think she has to be clear about that, whether her husband needs to vent and if he is doing it to speak Lashon Hara, there's 3 things that she can do. Number 1, she needs to have a conversation with him and say, what's the line between venting and Lashon Hara? I want to understand so that when I'm listening to you vent, because I know you need that and I want to be there for you, how do I differentiate between that and Lashon Hara? And let him answer, and if he says, oh, well, if I start to just go on, repeat it 10 times, that means that's not venting anymore. So I want you to feel mad at them. Then it's Lashon Hara. So say, okay, so if you repeat it more than like twice, I'm supposed to tell you, oh, this might be Lashon Hara. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Let it find that out. So the first thing is to have a conversation with him. The second thing is guard your tongue with him. Rabbi Zelik Pliskin has a beautiful sefer, guard your tongue. There's many out there, H.O.T, lesson a day. There's many books on that. And it's just remarkable. If you learn those every day, suddenly your whole awareness wakes up, like a part of your neshama, part of your brain wakes up and implements it more. He may not be open to it, but you could say, I'm really worried about my own Lashon Hara. I want to learn the laws better. And then, you can learn them together. That's the second thing. And the third thing that will happen the third thing that she can do is she can say, listen, I want to be there for you. I want to be the best wife possible. And if that means, listening to you gossip as a way to vent, I'm willing to do that. Can you think of an alternative thing we could do? and having a brainstorming session about ways to solve it and ways to handle it. Kind of, again, cupping my hands and giving the problem to the husband and let him come up with a solution for it, because he, it's an avera to listen to, it's a sin to listen to gossip. And, so she is mechayev, she is obligated to not listen to gossip. But again, there is a fine line in being there for somebody and letting them vent so that they don't cause way more damage to the person that they're talking about. And also getting her husband off that, sometimes if someone gets something in their mind and it's so aggravating, and when they let it off, then they're okay about it. So there is a process that people go through by verbalizing things that can be healthy. And so he needs to have the availability. She needs to be available for him to do that. Again, the more discussion about how to do that and what she should and shouldn't do, the better. In other words, for them to have an understanding about it is going to make all the difference in the world. Fabulous questions today, ladies. Wow. Okay, here's the homework. Now, this is going to be hard, but the payoff is immeasurable. One time this week, when you are thinking about your routines and, bedtime ain't working, dishes, he disappears, there's conflict, there's tension, take a look at something in your logistic plan that is broken and try and figure out a solution to fix it. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to implement it, and by the end of this week you have to have it all. Now we're good, But just recognize your first step is to recognize what logistics aren't working in the home, and then the second part of it is to figure out what might work better and to discuss that with your husband perhaps, and to try and figure out something else, or just let him off the hook. Say, what, I got bedtime, and whatever. And hopefully he'll fill in somewhere else or think of somewhere else. I've got bedtime. Do you mind, just putting all the dishes in the dishwasher, something like that. That might be insulting or might be hard for him. He might like bedtime. So you might have to have a big conversation about it. But the only homework I'm saying, notice where the logistics is causing tension in your life and lack of harmony. That's the homework. Okay, this is Leah Richheimer for the Ladies Talk Show. We will see you next time. If you want more, we have so much more. If you want to learn our Masorah and have an awesome marriage, the first thing we have is a foundations course. It's a 13-week course. You get all your questions answered. It's live with me, and you can ask Q&A. It's awesome. Second thing we have is a coaching program. If you are awesome with people and you want to know the Masorah better than 99% of the people on the planet Earth, like for reals, okay? It's a 4-month program. It's very intense. We have major scholarships, and we have somebody who's granted in a lot to pay for a big bulk of it. It's still a little expensive, but for what you get, and then you can start charging money to know it. That's the coaching program. Don't miss it. Go to www.ladiestalkshow.com. Look up the foundations course, look up the coaching. We do retreats, we do all kinds of stuff. You'll find it there. www.ladiestalkshow.com. Thanks for being with us. Leah Richheimer for the Ladies Talk Show.